Israel is in turmoil. Massive protests have erupted across the nation. Citizens are demanding a ceasefire in Gaza. The protests are impacting daily life. Public transportation is disrupted, and businesses are forced to close. The protests are fueled by a deep sense of grief and anger. Israel is reeling from a devastating war with Hamas. The conflict has left deep scars on both sides. The protests reflect a growing desire for peace. The protests intensified after a grim discovery. The streets of Israel were filled with the voices of thousands, each one echoing the pain and anger of a nation in mourning. The air was thick with tension as people demanded answers and justice for the lives lost. The bodies of 6 Israeli hostages were recovered. These individuals, who had been taken from their homes and families, were found lifeless, their dreams and futures cruelly cut short. The sight of the coffins draped in the Israeli flag was a stark reminder of the human cost of conflict. They had been killed by Hamas during the war. The brutal reality of their deaths highlighted the ongoing violence and the devastating impact it has on innocent lives. The war-torn streets of Gaza stood as a testament to the relentless cycle of violence that has plagued the region. The news sparked outrage and heartbreak across Israel. Families and friends of the victims were seen embracing, their faces etched with grief and disbelief. The entire nation seemed to pause, united in their sorrow and anger. It fueled demands for a decisive response against Hamas. The calls for action grew louder, with many insisting that something must be done to prevent further loss of life. The protests were not just about the 6 hostages, but about the broader desire for security and peace. The hostages included families and young people. Their photos, now symbols of a tragic loss, were shared widely, each image telling a story of a life interrupted. These were not just names on a list, but beloved members of the community whose absence would be deeply felt. Their deaths have touched a nerve in Israeli society. Memorial services were held across the country, with people coming together to honor the memories of those who had been taken too soon. The collective grief was palpable, a shared pain that brought people closer together. The hostages were seen as symbols of innocence caught in the crossfire. Their stories resonated deeply, highlighting the tragic reality of how conflict spares no one, not even the most innocent. The images of children and families affected by the violence served as a powerful reminder of the need for peace. Their deaths have amplified calls for an end to the violence. Peace rallies were organized, with people from all walks of life coming together to demand an end to the bloodshed. The voices calling for a ceasefire grew stronger, united in the hope that such tragedies could be prevented in the future. Protesters are demanding an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. They want the government to prioritize the safety of its citizens. They are also calling for accountability from Hamas. They want justice for the hostages and other victims of the conflict. Labor unions have joined the protests. They have organized strikes in solidarity with the protesters. The strikes have added to the pressure on the government. They demonstrate the widespread support for the protests' demands. Prime Minister Netanyahu has faced intense criticism. He is accused of mishandling the conflict with Hamas. Netanyahu has defended his government's actions. He claims that Israel had no choice but to retaliate against Hamas's attacks. Netanyahu has called for unity and forgiveness. He has asked the families of the hostages to forgive the government for their loss. However, his pleas have been met with anger and skepticism. Many Israelis believe that the government must be held accountable. Section 5. International pressure for a resolution. International pressure is mounting on both sides. Around the world, people are taking to the streets, demanding an end to the violence. Protesters are holding signs, chanting for peace, and calling for their governments to take action. The global community is increasingly vocal about the need for a resolution. The United States and other world powers are calling for a ceasefire. High-level meetings are being held, with leaders from various countries discussing the urgent need to halt the hostilities. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has been particularly active, emphasizing the importance of immediate action to prevent further loss of life. They are urging Israel and Hamas to return to the negotiating table. Diplomatic channels are being utilized to bring both parties together, with mediators working tirelessly to facilitate dialogue. The goal is to find common ground and establish a framework for lasting peace. The international community is concerned about the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. Mediation efforts are underway. aid organizations are mobilizing resources to provide relief to those affected by the conflict. International delegates are discussing strategies to ensure that humanitarian aid reaches those in need without delay. Egypt is playing a key role in trying to broker a ceasefire. Egyptian diplomats are actively engaged in negotiations, leveraging their unique position and relationships with both sides. Their efforts are crucial in the ongoing attempts to de-escalate the situation. However, progress has been slow. Despite the intense diplomatic efforts, the negotiations have faced numerous setbacks. Frustration is evident among diplomats as they struggle to bridge the deep divides between the conflicting parties. Both sides remain entrenched in their positions. The discussions are often heated, with representatives from Israel and Hamas holding firm to their demands. The lack of compromise has made it difficult to move forward. The conflict has strained relations between Israel and some of its allies. Diplomatic tensions are rising as allied nations express their concerns and frustrations. The ongoing violence is testing the strength of these alliances, adding another layer of complexity to the situation. The United Nations has also been vocal, with numerous member states calling for an immediate ceasefire and a return to peace talks. Statements from international leaders highlight the urgency of the situation and the need for a coordinated global response. On the ground, humanitarian workers are facing immense challenges as they strive to provide aid and support to those caught in the crossfire. The impact on civilians, especially children, is devastating, and the need for a resolution is more pressing than ever. Around the globe, peace rallies are being held, with people from all walks of life coming together to advocate for an end to the conflict. These demonstrations reflect a widespread desire for peace and a collective call for action from the international community. As diplomatic efforts continue, the hope remains that a resolution can be reached. The international community is united in its call for peace, and the ongoing negotiations are a testament to the commitment to finding a solution. The path to peace is challenging, but the determination to achieve it is unwavering. Section 6. Hamas's defiance and ongoing threats. Hamas remains defiant. The group claims victory in the recent conflict. Hamas has vowed to continue its fight against Israel. It has threatened to launch more attacks if its demands are not met. Hamas is demanding an end to the blockade of Gaza. It also wants the release of Palestinian prisoners held by Israel. Hamas has shown no willingness to renounce violence. It continues to view Israel as an illegitimate state. Section 7. Uncertain future negotiations and escalation. The situation remains volatile. Negotiations for a ceasefire are ongoing, but a breakthrough seems elusive. The risk of further escalation remains high. Both sides have shown a willingness to use force. The conflict has deepened divisions within Israeli society. The protests reflect these divisions. The conflict has also fueled tensions between Israel and its Arab neighbors. The international community is struggling to find a way to end the violence. Section 8. The human cost of conflict. The conflict has taken a heavy toll on both sides. Thousands of people have been killed. Many more have been injured or displaced from their homes. The conflict has exacerbated the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. The conflict has left lasting psychological scars. Children on both sides have witnessed unimaginable violence. The trauma of the conflict will continue to affect generations to come. The international community must provide support for the victims. Section 9. Global implications of the Gaza conflict. The ongoing conflict in Gaza has not only affected the immediate region, but has also sent ripples across the globe, influencing international relations, economic stability, and humanitarian efforts. The conflict has far-reaching implications. It has sparked protests and demonstrations in numerous countries, with people taking to the streets to voice their support or opposition. These protests have sometimes turned violent, leading to clashes with law enforcement and further escalating tensions. It has fueled tensions between the Muslim world and the West. The conflict has exacerbated existing divides, with many in the Muslim world viewing the situation as a symbol of broader injustices and grievances. This has led to increased anti-Western sentiment and strained diplomatic relations. The conflict has also highlighted the divisions within the international community. At the United Nations and other international forums, countries have struggled to reach a consensus on how to address the situation. This lack of unity has hindered efforts to mediate and resolve the conflict. The conflict underscores the failure to find a lasting solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Decades of negotiations and peace talks have yet to yield a sustainable resolution, leaving both sides entrenched in their positions and perpetuating a cycle of violence and retaliation. The conflict has diverted attention from other global crises. As media outlets and governments focus on the developments in Gaza, other pressing issues such as the global pandemic, economic instability, and regional conflicts have received less attention and resources. It has also hampered efforts to address climate change and other pressing issues. The international community's focus on the Gaza conflict has delayed progress on critical initiatives aimed at combating climate change, addressing poverty, and promoting sustainable development. The international community must work together to prevent future conflicts. Collaborative efforts are essential to address the root causes of such conflicts and to promote peace and stability. By fostering dialogue, understanding, and cooperation, we can work towards a more peaceful and just world. Section 10. The long road to peace. The path to peace remains elusive. Decades of negotiations have failed to bridge the divide between Israel and the Palestinians. Mistrust and animosity run deep on both sides. The conflict has become deeply entrenched. Finding a peaceful solution will require extraordinary leadership. It will also require a willingness to compromise on both sides. The international community must play a constructive role in facilitating dialogue. Section 11. Hope amidst the ruins. Despite the challenges, there is always hope for peace. Civil society organizations on both sides are working tirelessly to promote dialogue and understanding. These organizations offer a glimmer of hope in the midst of despair. Education is key to breaking down barriers. By fostering empathy and understanding, education can help to create a more peaceful future. The international community must support these efforts. Peace is possible, but it will require a collective effort.